Yeah, hi Naved. Back to the scheduling discussions. Uh,
Hi, Abhi.
the last week's video, there is tremendous response. Many people watched it and they are very happy. They found value in them. And today, what is the topic of discussion?
For today's topic, we will discuss the best practices too from the GAU scheduling practice. From the GAU reference book, we will go through the best practice too, which is sequencing the activity. So we started with capturing all activities. Now we will sequence them, and then we go in series with all the best practices. Like once you do sequencing, how you will do the uh, duration estimate and resource estimate. These these practices we will cover in later.
Yeah, please
So
go ahead. I'm here to listen.
today, sure.
Yeah, good. Please go ahead.
So so we have already covered the part of capturing all activities. So we said like we need to have all the activities listed from all the stakeholders involved in the project. So once that is done, we know that all the activities are covered and we are not missing on any part regarding capturing activities. So we know like all the stakeholders activities are covered in it. So once this is done, the capturing activities is done, then we move on to the second best practice, which is sequencing the activity. So we need to create a network logic between the activities. So what it will do is it will drive your end date for the project. That's what the network logic does. So when you connect the activities with each other, finish to start, once you do first activity, then you go to the second one, third one, fourth, and doing this, you create a network logic, and this helps you predict the end of the project. And this is where then the other process start, like we start with the critical path method with the duration, with the end duration in mind. We see the longest path and what is driving the schedule. So while doing the sequencing, there are some parameters that we need to consider. And for today's topic, I will keep it short and we will cover the best practices that is covered in GAU. So um, let's begin with that. So
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
okay, okay. So for sequencing activities, it's very necessary to have predecessor and successor logic for all the activities defined. Like if we have four activities, all the activities should be linked to each other. No activities should be without a predecessor or a successor, unless it is a milestone. The exception is only for milestone activities, the start and the finish milestone. The start milestone will not have a predecessor, whereas the um, finish milestone will not have a successor. So these are the only two exceptions that we will have in a schedule. And for sequencing activities, when we are linking the activities to each other, we need to take care that we do not, I mean, unless it is a constraint, if there is a dependency for an activity that some external supplier is providing you a material, and that is where you have an external constraint or external activities dependent. Otherwise you will always have a predecessor and a successor defined. So when we are doing that, we have four types of predecessor, activity logic defined. Like we have finish to start, we have start to start, finish to finish, and we have start to finish. But the most common one that we use will be the finish to start logic, that after you finish activity one, you move on to activity two, activity three, and activity four. Unless we have some activities that start with a predecessor, like activity three starts with activity one, like when activity one begins, activity three can also begin. So this is where the start to start logic will happen. But other than that, we cover mostly the finish to start logic in all the activities as a general practice, or a normal practice that we do. So we connect the activities with finish to start, and then the start to start is an exception and the finish to finish is an exception. And also when we are using the start to start and finish to finish, this happens mostly in the case of activities where we need where it 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 don't need to have a predecessor or a successor. So at least we need to connect it to the start and the finish milestone which is start to start and finish to finish. So this is where we use these two, and the one more logic, the start to finish logic. It is very exceptionally used, not recommended by any best practices. So when, I mean, generally we don't use it, and I won't recommend using it, because in case you are not aware of uh, aware of the situation to use it, and and if you progress your activity the other way around, there will be conflict. There will be a loop created in your schedule. There are chances of creating loop, and this is where the logic will not be properly defined. So the start to finish logic, we try to avoid it. But yes, it is necessary in some cases. But then you have to make sure that you note it in your basis of, I mean, in your basis document, the schedule basis document. You need to note all your exceptions and all your constraints that you are using for any schedule. So this is where the four logic comes into place. And as I said, the exceptions are only start to start and the finish to not start, the start milestone and the finish milestone. These are the only exceptions that will not have a predecessor and a successor. So this was regarding the milestones for sequencing, and then we move on to the constraints. Yeah.
Now, here I
So
have a couple of questions. Okay. That is about the real practice. Now, see, for a small project, if there is somebody who knows everything about the project, it is very easy to sit in front of a tool and then bang in the activities.
you're right. You're right.
Now, here, first thing is, I think a big collaboration effort is required across multiple engineering disciplines to identify the dependencies itself,
Indeed.
right? So that is one. So do you come out with these activity sequences separately prior to input them into the scheduling tool?
Um, Actually, this activity, I mean, this process of sequencing activity, it goes hand in hand while capturing the activities. You don't do it separately. I mean, as a best practice, they do it. They define, like, first capture everything you have to do, and then you sequence them. But I mean, when any scheduler or a planner is making a list of activities for any task, for any package, or any work pack, he's developing a work pack. It's logically into his mind that he will start with obtaining permit, the first activity. Then he will start with the site prep activities, and then, so this sequence is already captured in the mind of the stakeholder that he is working with. So this activity is, I mean, it's like it goes by default. So yes, I mean, we need to have a discussion with this, for activities um, that are very critical, or activities that you need to do parallel with other activities. So for those activities, you need to have a one-to-one discussion with the stakeholders that are involved with those activities. But other than that, when you're having a generic discussion about any project activity, the discussion happens in the logic sequence. Nobody will start with the end activity in the start, and go in the reverse chronological order. So it always starts with the first activity, and it moves on to the next logical activity sequence.
So
So
it is
yes,
done
we do
by,
it.
sorry, go ahead, please.
Yes, you can continue. I mean,
Is it done by the project manager or is it done by the scheduler, this coordination work?
um, actually, it's done by the scheduler,
Okay.
because the project manager, I mean, as per his role, he is not supposed to be involved on these minor activities. These activities are limited to the schedulers, the planners. So it's better handled by them than the project manager doing all the nitty-gritty stuff and going into much detail of the activity. He should be limited to the milestones and the major activities.
That is an excellent opportunity for the scheduler to do more collaborative work and know and
Correct.
interact with the stakeholders if he's ambitious. Okay, that is a great opportunity. Then another question, in fact, the doubt I have is now the duration of the activities is dependent on resource loading.
Indeed.
Now, at this, so where at what stage do we do the resource loading in a EPC project?
Um, well, let's say when we have the activities defined and the sequencing done, so you already have your whole schedule in place, I mean the logic defined and the activities captured. So now what you'll go with is the duration estimate of individual activities. And to get onto the individual activity duration, you have to define the resources that will be involved, and the resources include everything like the material, the manpower, the machinery, or contractors, subcontractors, everything. So we take into account all those resources involved for each single activity, and then we come up with a duration estimate, and then we assign it to the to each sequence activity, and this will ultimately give your project a realistic duration estimate for the complete schedule logic. And that is where you will define your critical path and your longest path and your critical chain activity. That's how it works. I mean, it all comes down to your resources, how many resources you have available, or how much resources you plan to utilize on your schedule. So this goes two way. Either you have resource constraints, you have this many resources and you have to do with them, so your duration will change for activity and your activities will go long. And when you have the resources based on your estimate, the activity based on um, the thumb rule estimate from the stakeholder, from the guys doing the job, and the minimum resource with the minimum resource requirement. That is where you define the resource requirement, and then you come up with the estimate like, okay, I'm going with these many manpowers for these sequence of activities, and then starts with your resource leveling and all those things which comes in uh, at a later stage. But yes, for defining your duration, you need to have resource defined. Once you have resource defined, it it's clear for your schedule to be complete.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the explanation. Now let us maybe move on to the next point.
The next point, coming on to the sequencing activities, we covered the predecessor and successor logic. Now, we and also the constraint. Uh, then we need to cover the leads and lags for for in the activities. There are situations wherein we add leads or we add lags. So, uh, but as a general best practice, it's not recommended to use leads and lags, but there are exceptions, and when there are these exceptions, you need to make sure that you note down somewhere in your schedule estimate document, so that you are aware where are you using it, and it doesn't go unnoticed. But the best practice for using leads and lags is to define an activity for that lag you are using. For example, if I'm saying like I am uh, like an example is you're pouring the concrete on the floor, and then you say after pouring the concrete, you go with the erection of the column. But you say you put a lag for the erection of columns. You say like it can start after 15 days. So you give a 15-day lag, and this what will happen is after you finish your pouring activity, the activity will only move after 15 days because there is a lag happening in between, and then your column erection can start. But but this is only visible for the scheduler, because in your schedule this will appear as a dotted line, for the lag. But to get it visible and to capture it in your activity, you need to define that lag activity. If you can define it, like you can say this is the curing time that you need for the concrete. the concrete needs to be dried completely, and that process is called curing. So you say like, okay, time for curing is 15 days, and then you can start with the column erection. So you avoid that lag, and then you add an activity for that lag process. So this is where the best practice is that you should not use it, but if there are exceptions for using it, you need to make sure you document it and your readers are aware of where the lags and leads are used.
So the best part, the best practice is you capture it within the activity duration itself.
Indeed.
Okay, good. So it will look like a buffer, but not even a buffer. It is a real requirement.
No, it is a requirement, but people just to make the schedule short, we happen to just define one activity and cover 2-3 activities in one activity. Summarize it. So this is the part covering the sequencing activities. When we say sequencing, we need to make sure that we are taking into consideration everything, defining the logic for the predecessor successor, uh, exception for the milestones. Then we look for the constraint. What constraints are we using? And if it is used, then we make sure we note it down. And if constraints are not used, we need to also make sure that no lags and leads are used. If used, then we need to make sure that it's being captured. So these 3 points are very important whenever you are sequencing an activity.
And see, I've come across something called schedule constructibility reviews. That means the schedule is done, then it goes for a review for all practical aspects. Is it a theoretical schedule or is it something which can be really implemented? Is that recommended as a best practice in Go?
Yeah, the schedule review is recommended, and the according to the best practice, we say there is this DCMA 14 points that we use for checking any schedule that we have prepared. And what it does is it does the same thing that we are discussing now. It will check for activities that does not have predecessor successor. It will check for activities that is having high float, low float. It will check for activities that is having constraints. And so like this, there are 14 points that are defined, and it will check based on these parameters how your schedule is performing. So once during your review, you take into consideration all these 14 points, it becomes very easier for you to understand if your schedule really meets the compliance.
There is I could get a lot of insights from this discussion. Now, for the benefit of the viewers of this video, do you have any links to your blog or LinkedIn or if corresponding to this topic? So if you can share it with me, maybe I'll put it as in the description of the video so that the viewers can click on it and then use it as a reference material.
Sure, I will send you the link for the LinkedIn post, and in future I'm trying to come up with a compilation of all the posts that I created, based on each best practices and the other materials that I use for my reading materials. So I will send you the link along with the book reference, the GAO reference guide. It is a free download document from the US government website. So I'll share you the link, and you can further add it to your post.
Excellent. So as soon as I get the link, I'll add it in the description of this video so that the viewers can click on it and then visit those things. Thank you very much. This was a very good discussion, at least for me. I cleared some of my doubts about scheduling, and I hope the viewers also will get tremendous value by watching these videos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you for your time.